the outer casing starts to degrade immediately, slowly releasing the bupivacaine, the seeds on the inside, into the area that's inflamed from the surgery. And it takes several days for that to take place. And so you get that long-acting effect of that pain control.
Clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now it's time to roll back and start the first case.
On this week's episode of First Case, we are speaking with Kim Duggan, Senior Director and ERAS Specialist at Pacira Biosciences. And Chris, today's interview is going to be highlighting the evidence-based practices that are implemented when we implement an ERAS pathway or we look at ERAS protocols. We're going to be defining what ERAS is, if that's an abbreviation that you don't know. And we're also going to be talking about one of the many non-opioid options that we have available to us for managing postoperative pain.
Kim is phenomenal. You can just feel her passion. And I'm excited for everybody to learn that it's not just hurting or opioids, that there is an absolute better pathway for them. And Kim's got all the information today.
She really does. She is a wonderful educator. So stay with us. We will be right back with Kim Duggan.
Hi, I'm Chris Blevins.
And I'm Melanie Perry.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to First Case.
Joining us now is Kim Duggan, Senior Director and ERAS Specialist at Pacira Biosciences. Kim, you and I met at an AORN Guidelines workshop in 2023, and I was already thinking about this season, thinking about how we could talk about the different topics related to the opioid crisis and alternative ways for pain management. And then I ran into you and we got to talking about liposomal bupivacaine and how well that fits within this greater topic and context. And so I knew we had to talk to you. And obviously there's more to talk about as well, looking at ERAS pathways and how these different drugs fit into those ERAS protocols. So thank you so much for agreeing to this interview. I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here, and it's great to see you and Chris again.
Yes, I'm so excited. This is really going to be a good conversation, but I always get ahead of myself as I start talking about what I think is great that we're going to talk about. But I will say that one thing I've learned about drugs like liposomal bupivacaine is that they are highly effective when we are looking at our arsenal for regional anesthesia and for opioid-free surgery or opioid-sparing surgery. And I am very excited to learn more about that today and its role within our perioperative care. But before we dive into that or ERAS protocols or anything else, why don't you go ahead and tell your story and tell us a little bit more about you and your experience as an OR director?
Well, very excited to share. So I've actually been in healthcare for 38 years. I am dating myself. 25 of those years have been spent in the OR. So I started off, as we all do, as a circulator, moved on to scrubbing and assisting with all different types of procedures. In 2007, I took a leadership role managing the OR and running trauma surgery on weekends in a vacation destination location. So I was able to see how we got our patients into surgery, through surgery, and get them safely discharged. 2 years ago, at the height of COVID, my hospital was changing ownership. And with my OR experience, I found myself presented with an incredible opportunity to join Pacira Biosciences to serve in an area of healthcare I am just personally passionate about, which is quality of care. And consequently, I made the decision to leave clinical practice and embark on this new journey of stepping into industry.
That's really cool. Your career progression has been really interesting. And I think there's one thing that we really need to hit on when we look back at your career, and that was being tasked with implementing ERAS protocols within your facility. It certainly made you an expert in that area. What happened? Can you tell us that story?
It was an interesting journey. Or it's been an interesting journey. So early in 2015, I had been running trauma surgery for about 8 years when my lead anesthesiologist, who is a dear friend, shared with me the challenges the hospital was facing with capacity issues from long lengths of stay, readmissions, and subsequent readmission penalties. So he then asked me if I had ever heard of ERAS and would I be interested in helping to launch a new program. So at that time, ERAS was just making its way to the East Coast. I live in North Carolina, but there was not a broad awareness or understanding of how to implement ERAS. So drawing from my years of experience from running trauma surgery and learning how to get patients into surgery and through and safely discharged, I started building our hospital's first ERAS surgical service line of colorectal surgery.
Now, Kim, just for our general public and those that are listening that would like to know, could you just explain a little bit about what we're referring to? What is ERAS protocol and the program that you were tasked to create?
That is such a great question. So ERAS is a paradigm shift away from traditional surgical throughput. The way we used to put our patients through surgery, we actually now realize we're creating harm. So we would bring them in dehydrated because we would say nothing to eat or drink after midnight. We would give them a ton of fluids intraoperatively. We would load them up on opiates, over-sedating them, and then we would tell them just to lay there and rest and sleep, and then we wouldn't get them up and moving.
But we want you to get better quickly.
Right, yeah.
Just lay there. So
we're going to start at a deficit and then work our way up.
So the interesting thing is ERAS functions off of evidence-based best practice. So now, instead, we carbohydrate load our patients. We give them a carbohydrate-loaded beverage that helps them to optimize the morning of their surgery. It gives them those energy resources that their bodies are going to be required to get through surgery. We use goal-directed fluid therapy. We're not going to overload them anymore. And we educate them to give them the tools that they need for their best outcome. We're saying you've got to be up the day of surgery. You've got to start moving. And we help them to meet their discharge goals so that they can fast track out of the hospital and then return to home and start the recovery process.
And then also, I think it's, I believe in our previous discussions, we've mentioned it's the readmission of these patients after they've had surgery that's also causing some challenges for that institution.
Absolutely. So oftentimes, because we do use opioids in surgery, those opioids are short acting. So once the patient gets home, they're discharged home and they have received a traditional opioid, that will wear off within 12 hours of surgery. So once they get home, the very reason why they readmit back to the hospital is because of pain. So using non-opioid pain management strategies now helps patients to have better outcomes and be able to get back to their baseline and be restored to their quality of life.
So one thing I want to hit on before we move into some of these non-opioid measures and talk about those that we are implementing. You mentioned that we are now carbohydrate loading our patients. And one of the things I learned at the AORN Expo this year, because I went to an ERAS protocol breakfast and we sat and learned about ERAS pathways and learned about all the different ways that patients are being really primed for surgery instead of just rolling in starving and dehydrated and miserable. We are more
hangry.
aware. Yeah, hangry. Absolutely hangry. We're doing a better job. Yeah, we're doing a much better job. And that includes this idea of fluids and eating and all these other things at much different time frames than what I think we're traditionally comfortable with. And even hearing that something like Gatorade is something that can be used at 2 carbohydrate load prior to surgery. Tell our audience a little bit more about that, because I think it is a paradigm shift from what we're used to.
It is. It's the same principle as what an athlete would do before they run a marathon. What do? They carbohydrate load. They load up. And it gives the patient or the athlete those energy resources for their bodies to pull from to get them through the marathon, i.e. the surgery. So, and it brings them, and for our diabetic patients, the main thing too as well is to increase their fluid intake so they're not coming in dehydrated and that they have those reserves to pull from. But some of the feedback I would get from patients who had been appropriately carbohydrate loaded was they had a feeling of wellness. They felt like they could get through the surgery and have a better outcome. And to me, that it just sings the praises of what ERAS contributes to quality of care.
So learning all of these changes in protocol, right? And even though medicine changes all the time, right? But we are sticklers and we are, we like our habits, don't we? How did you overcome, and even did you have any barriers to preventing these new protocols from being implemented at these various facilities?
We did. And you're right. We are all creatures of habit, and most folks are resistant to change. So the very first thing I considered when I was implementing my ERAS program was what prevented patients from discharging. So obviously it was being over-sedated due to the amount of opiates that we were administering intraoperatively and in the PACU. So we knew we had to manage their pain, but I also needed the patients to be able to meet discharge criteria such as eating, drinking, walking, voiding, I would say pooping.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, all systems have to be go before we discharge.
All systems go.
Yes.
All systems go. But if they were over-sedated, they couldn't. And so I asked what non-opioid pain solutions were available. And I was told liposomal bupivacaine and how it could be used within an anesthesia regional block. So I wrote that into our first surgical service line of colorectal surgery. And I took an 8-day length of stay down to 2 days with no readmissions. And after that, my administration immediately took notice because it was lowering our capacity issues that we were facing. And they asked if I could replicate it into other service lines. And so we rapidly expanded. We went immediately to spine, total joint, and cardiac surgery. And by the time I left the organization in 2022 to join the Pacira family, I had 17 service lines, and it was a huge cost savings for our hospital.
I'm sure your patient satisfaction rates also went up because
they went up
we as patients. Oh, that is incredible. Yeah, we heal better when we're at home, don't we?
We do.
Yeah,
we do.
Absolutely.
We're in our circle of support, in our familiar surroundings, surrounded with the people that we love, and we know that they're going to take care of us. At least you would hope that they would be taking care of us.
Right. So then tell us, because you mentioned implementing liposomal bupivacaine, and everyone may not have heard of it or they might not know how it works. So can you give us some education on this drug and tell us more about what it's doing for the patient?
So liposomal bupivacaine, Exparel, it's encapsulated bupivacaine in a multivesicular liposome. So envision a pomegranate. The seeds within the pomegranate is the bupivacaine. The outer casing of the pomegranate is the liposome. So when that is injected into the nerve planes through a regional block by the anesthesiologist or by the surgeon as an infiltrate, the outer casing starts to degrade immediately, slowly releasing the bupivacaine, the seeds on the inside, into the area that's inflamed from the surgery. And it takes several days for that to take place. And so you get that long-acting effect of that pain control.
Much better than opioid.
So when I've seen it used in practice, I've seen it used where we would do the local infiltration and put it around an incision site, or maybe inject it, do it with a block or something like that. But then I've also seen it coupled with a short-acting bupivacaine, because that long-acting bupivacaine does take a while to kick in. How long does it take before it starts working?
Well, liposomal bupivacaine starts to work immediately. So it starts to degrade immediately. But to your point, you do need that bridge for that immediate release. And that's why you can admix it with some additional bupivacaine so you get that immediate efficacy within the block to carry it until the outer casing is completely degraded and the bupivacaine is released.
Yeah, our surgeons always said, we're doing this short acting so they don't wake up and pack you thinking they're hurting really bad while we're waiting for the rest of the liposomal bupivacaine to kick in. And then they have this great 72-hour pain relief, but we got to get to that.
Bridge it.
Yeah, we got to bridge it. Yeah.
So it's similar to how we use epinephrine mixed with our local medications as well, right?
Right. Correct.
Wonderful. So that patient, theoretically, a patient can almost be, pain-free, if not just experiencing minimum discomfort from the moment they wheel out of our operating room all the way through their healing journey at home. And you've seen that in action, maybe even personally.
I've been a recipient.
Yeah.
Oh, please do tell.
Yes.
So not TMI here, but I actually, within the last couple months, I had to have a total hysterectomy due to a small tumor I had, but I was put through the ERAS pathway for GYN surgery that I wrote for the hospital 4 years ago. They ran it to the letter of the law. I think they were scared.
Sure.
But I received every component exactly as I had written it, and I received my liposomal bupivacaine. I was discharged and home within 4 hours. Did not take one opiate because I didn't need it. I didn't require it. I had zero pain. And I actually, don't tell my surgeon, I was back to work the very next day.
Oh my gosh, Kim.
Okay.
Yeah. I couldn't fly like I travel for work, so I couldn't travel, but I could work from home, and I got a lot of work done.
So ultimately, you weren't physically moving around a lot, but you felt good enough to be able to do other things because your body wasn't focused on the pain that normally people experience after surgery, right?
Yes and no. I will also confess that I did a little extra that I probably shouldn't have done, but I went over and started over to my mother's house and started hanging some drywall. But
Kim. Okay.
Nurses are the worst patients. We're just going to say that right now. We are terrible patients. But I think the message and the takeaway is that you were the recipient of the ERAS protocol, ERAS pathway that you wrote. You were able to experience it firsthand that it did work, and that between that, following that pathway, being primed and optimized for surgery, having a liposomal bupivacaine and other medications on board that were there to control your pain postoperatively so you didn't have to depend on those opioid medications, created a great environment for you to be able to heal after your surgery.
It was a comprehensive approach to quality of care. It absolutely was a game changer for me. And I know if it was for me, it is for my patients as well.
For sure. Yeah. Personal experience is always the best to indicate that something works, right?
It is.
So I think that you have experienced that as a patient. And I'm also curious as to how this could be a pathway for patients who have had previous experiences with opioids. In fact, even those that are addicted or, have been addicted to opioid and other narcotics, they still need care in the operating room. And unfortunately, they might have to have surgery. This now becomes a pathway for them to be able to have pain controlled without going to that next level that could affect that addiction. Can you speak to how that has helped, those protocols in hospitals?
Absolutely. To me, substance use disorder, that's our most fragile patient population group. Of course, our seniors are as well, but people who are in recovery, who are so desperate to hang on to the sobriety that they have worked so hard for, and yet now they're faced with having a surgery. They need strategies, non-opiate pain strategies, to help them get through surgery so that they can hang on to and maintain the hard work that they've already invested themselves in. And you can do that. You can achieve that for them with an ERAS pathway and then also using non-opioid liposomal bupivacaine. I think I was sharing with you guys when we were in Nashville that there wasn't a day that I wasn't approached by other people in healthcare, friends of cousins, aunts, uncles, that they would share their stories with me. I've got my cousin's coming in. He's got to have surgery. He's been in recovery for 3 years. He's got an opiate addiction. Can you help them? And we did exactly that. We created ERAS pathways. If I didn't have a service line already in existence, we would create a pathway for them, and we would use non-opiate liposomal bupivacaine. I can assure you that not one of those patients received an opiate after surgery or a prescription to take home, and they had great success with their program. It's amazing, and it's the right thing to do for these patients.
I think our patients that have a substance abuse disorder, patients who are hanging on maybe sometimes just tooth and nail to their sobriety, and it is a fight, and it can be, we've heard, it can be a lifelong fight for so many of our patients to maintain that. And they get afraid because they know that surgery is going to involve pain. And how do you treat pain? Well, we typically treat it with narcotics and with opioids. And that's the gateway back to losing that sobriety they've worked so hard for. So then to experience compassion, because how often do patients with a substance abuse disorder face discrimination or judgment from the healthcare community? Well, you're just a druggie. You don't need this anyway, or whatever. And all of these horrible things that they either really experience or they're afraid they will experience. And then instead to be able to find a place that says, no, we recognize that this is an issue. Let's have some compassion for you, and let's make a protocol and put something in place so that you can actually have the surgery you need, and we can care for you holistically, not just with the total knee or the gallbladder or whatever, but a holistic approach to all of your care. That's what all of our patients need, right?
Absolutely. And thank you for phrasing it exactly as you did. These patients, they need that compassionate care that we can provide them. Right now, currently, 98% of patients receive an opiate in surgery. We don't have to do that anymore. We have non-opiate pain management strategies in place. 10 to 15% of patients that are going into surgery who are opiate naive are going to continue with long-term use after their surgeries. That's staggering to me. So now we don't have to do that. We can avoid giving opiates because we have better options now. We have alternatives.
And there is legislation coming as well that's going to help these protocols become more mainstream and really protect our patients and advocate for them. And that's called the No Pain Act, right? Kim, can you talk to us a little bit about what's coming in 2025?
It is my honor to talk about no pain.
I wish everybody could see the smile on her face.
Yes.
Super excited to talk
Fist
about this.
pumping. Yeah. But thank goodness for it, right? The government's doing something right. We're so excited.
It absolutely is. So no pain was legislated and voted into law December of 2022, and we have to give Medicare 2 years to get it implemented. So it is preventative legislation aimed at tackling the opiate crisis by incentivizing the use of non-opiates to manage surgical pain for Medicare patients in hospitals, outpatient departments, so HOPDs. So liposomal bupivacaine is already reimbursed in ambulatory surgery centers, but now it will be reimbursed in HOPDs for Medicare patients. The legislation mandates that CMS will reimburse for qualifying non-opiate drugs and devices like liposomal bupivacaine, and it will be eliminating the cost concerns associated with providing patients with non-opioid pain strategies. And as you said, it goes into effect January 1, 2025. So we have just a few more months.
So the argument that we can't use a drug like this because it's too expensive is really out the window because of this act.
Takes away all cost concerns. Now, this is for Medicare patients, and we feel confident that the other private payers will also follow suit in the coming months and hope very soon. We hope that they will.
It's such a great precedent.
It really is, and we're very excited. We've spoken with a lot of these other private payer insurance companies, and they are all looking for substance use disorder prevention. And, of course, we're in that arena with them.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are at the end of another very informative conversation. And I feel like every time that we have a discussion, Chris, with any of our guests, I just walk away knowing so much and learning so much from the experts that we get to talk to. But Kim, before we wrap this conversation up, do you have any final thoughts? Anything else you want to share with our audience?
Well, of course I do.
Go for it.
So, hands down, ERAS is a phenomenal program. It reduces variability and improves quality. But ERAS, coupled with liposomal bupivacaine, is extraordinary. It signifies clinical excellence. And now with the addition of no pain, it removes the barriers of cost concerns and seamlessly integrates the financial aspects. So it's marrying the financial world with the clinical world of healthcare. And it's an amazing program, ERAS. And I'm so excited about no pain and liposomal bupivacaine and where we fit into that world.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to watch us move forward as the No Pain Act gets implemented and we see all of the other options that are now really available to our patients because they're now covered and we're not worrying about cost. So that is awesome. Kim, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Always a pleasure to see you, and great to be here. Thank you so much.
That was Kim Duggan, Senior Director and ERAS Specialist at Pacira Biosciences. And Chris, learning about how we can optimize our patients for surgery and looking at a comprehensive approach that doesn't just take their diagnosis into account, but takes the whole person into account through our ERAS pathways, how we can manage pain with non-opioid approaches. It's mind-blowing. All of the research that's out there and watching it be implementing is really cool to see.
It is. And I think especially, this whole season when we're talking about opioid epidemic, when you hear epidemic, it's really hard to feel a sense of, positiveness or growth. And from our conversation with Kim, I'm excited to see that there might actually be a way to flip the script and to, lower these numbers and do it without the patient just being in pain. Because I think that's what most people think. You're just going to hurt. And that's not the case with liposomal bupivacaine. And I just, once again, learned so much.
But yeah, you hit on a big point. People are always afraid when they hear about opioid sparing surgery or non-opioid techniques. Their knee-jerk reaction is to think, well, you just want me to hurt. And the truth is, we don't want you to hurt, but we also don't want you to be left with an addiction either. And so marrying that, balancing that out, and finding ways to treat the patient. There's so many options out there. And hopefully through this season, we can educate people on everything that is out there and available to them. But that is going to do it for today's episode. So on behalf of Chris and myself and the whole team here at First Case, thank you for listening to this week's podcast.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of First Case. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to First Case on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for First Case in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@firstcasemedia.com. We look forward to hearing from you.